Hey guys, time for another ramble. So, I'll admit my bias on this up front. I've lost at least two friends to them falling down the QAnon rabbit hole. Okay? And one of which is completely dead to me. And the other one is, kind of crazy on display right now. You can check his channel. It's Robert Wallace, Hatred 42. He's been posting a lot of strangeness. Now, it's calmed down the last two videos, but the one he put out 2 weeks ago on September 1st, it was pretty bad. He almost shot somebody in a parking lot. He was, you could see the gun in his hand. He was just like, what, motherfucker? So, yeah, that's where he is at this point. I've made a few videos, disagreeing with some of his viewpoints that have come out since he became a rabid reader of QAnon conspiracies, but there was a point where I can't even make fun of it. Saying that you wish people who support Black Lives Matter would be rounded up and driven over by a truck, that's just, that's too close to that stuff that's already happened. Wow. He got bitten by that virus that is QAnon, that mental disease, and so I have a bias. And so I felt like it would be important if we were to see QAnon be exposed, especially before this upcoming election, because it's part of Trump's base, and it's the worst part, right? I'm not saying that there aren't some good people who just feel that voting for Trump is more advantageous for them, Just like there's people on the left who are holding their nose and voting for Biden because they really want something more progressive, but they know they don't want Trump. There's people who are going to hold their nose and vote for Trump. I'm not saying that, everyone on the conservative side is bad or a bad person, but the QAnon followers, yeah, that's what Hillary Clinton was talking about when she was talking about deplorables, right? And there's at least, worldwide, 10 million of them. It's a lot of people who buy into this stuff. Some of those 10 million are probably just the journalists who are spiking the server counts, and the website traffic, because they're just trying to follow the crazy. But by website traffic, there's 10 million people who are either actively reading and involved and posting on these boards or just tracking the crazy. And it's really gotten out of hand, It is, by my measures, a cult, and it really needs to be exposed. So, I've been following a few other people and their research into exposing this, right? So, the long-standing theory about who Q is happened around 2016. There was a sale of 8chan, right? And the person who's now the owner of 8chan is Jim Watkins, right? Him being the site owner, of course, people were looking right at him. Like, that's probably it. And his son, Ron Watkins, runs the website, so maybe they're in tandem, both Q, right? After Watkins bought 8chan from its founder, Frederick Brennan kept pointing at Jim and Ron and saying they're probably either Q themselves or they know who Q is, right? And there's this like really public feud between them. Jim Watkins has tried to sue Frederick Brennan using law from the Philippines because apparently they were based in the Philippines, which, just a side note, the fact that there's a lot of child porn related to the posts on 8chan, and they're in the Philippines, just generates, some ideas in my head. Much like the way that Elon Musk assumed that the diver who was a white guy who lived in the Philippines, must be there because he likes, dabbling in kiddie porn and maybe child sex trafficking. It's just a thing. Like, we associate white guys who live in the Philippines with, why are you there? Oh, because it's probably easy access, right? So the fact that this QAnon thing is actually a theory about how there's this, international sex trade where, Hollywood elites and high-ranking Democrats are, trading children and then, like, ritual sacrificing them to drink their adrenochrome, and, like, they're doing, like, weird sex magic with them and all that. That's their theory. That's what they're fighting about. Like, their big battle cry right now is save the children, right? But then Watkins is a dude who's, white guy living in the Philippines. And, just like Elon Musk, might not have been right about that particular diver, I might not be right about Watkins. But he also is the owner of 8chan, where people are particularly perverse. And there are boards that are full of disgusting things. So, yeah. I have a bias. And when I hear Philippines and white guy, I'm like, no. Anyways, one of the things that Frederick Brennan, the original owner and founder of 8chan, said about Watkins was that he pointed out that Watkins could become Q whenever he wants because he's the owner of the site. He could actually post something as Q and use the same trip code, and then later on, like in the last 2 months, people have figured out that one of the aggregator sites, qmap.pub, was also hosted by the same company in Vancouver. So both websites were on the same server, and they figured, oh, maybe Jim Watkins owns both of them because they're both on the same server. Now, the user accounts that are associated with qmap.pub, the QAnon, QMapanon, right? That guy, his Twitter account has said to people that it is a separate owner, and the host service has said as much, that they're just providing denial of service security for both, but they haven't confirmed that it's the same owner. But it looks suspicious, right? What originally looked suspicious to me was when the El Paso shooting happened, and there was this big blow up about, QAnon and 8chan in the news because, 8chan was being used to share videos and stuff. What happened was 8chan went down, and Q didn't find a different place to post. Q didn't decide to drop the bread or whatever, the batter or whatever they're calling it, right? Q didn't post anything anywhere else until Jim Watkins found a different place for 8kun now. 8kun what is it? Sorry. 8kun.top. And so 8kun is the new site. 8chan is no more, right? Q posts there, and when that happened, I was like, okay, first it's suspicious that Q didn't find a different place to post at all during that time, and just like find a different way to have some identity confirmation, like the trip code that was used on 8chan. But I felt like if it isn't Jim Watkins who is Q, period, then he could just, when he starts 8kun, just say that he's Q, because the trip code won't transfer from one site to the other. So whoever gets one of these sites up and running and just says that they're Q at that point could just become Q. Right? Because there's no real connection between the two at that point. So we don't know if the original Q is Q now. Right? And what's been also said is it didn't matter even before that, because at any time the owner of the site could go in and use the same trip code and just post whatever he wants as if he's Q. So we don't have proof that Jim Watkins is Q. We just have the knowledge that if he ever wanted to fake that he was Q, he could. And the website that was doing like second party authentication, which was qmaps.pub, was being hosted by the same IP address, which means it could also be Jim Watkins who owns that as well, so he could post the the original Q post on 8kun, and then have the aggregator that everyone uses the most, qmap.pub, just verify it. Right. So it's a possibility, strong possibility, but no one can say for sure. Right? And there are some people who are a little bit more convinced than I am. I appreciate the work of Driven Progressive, both on YouTube and on TikTok. He does a lot to wake people up out of that rabbit hole that they fell down. But after I followed Driven Progressive and his fervor for proving that Jim Watkins was Q, something else happened. So there is a website called Logically, and they did an investigation, and they found that there's a connection between the QMap.pub developer who called himself QAppanon. Now, QAppanon had a Patreon account where QAppanon was getting about $3,000 a month at the time that it was ended, which was September 11th. And that, right now, it's September 16th, late at night. That was just 5 days ago that was ended, but it had a good run, right? For months, the guy was making money, basically just aggregating the Q posts and kind of authenticating them by being, the most popular aggregator. And, if both 8kun and QMap.pub didn't post that Q drop, then people would think that it might be fake. Anyways, Jason J. Jelinas, he's actually connected to the QAppanon persona by the investigation by Logically. Basically, they found out that, by taking email addresses and cross-referencing things, and they found out that there was a company called Patriot Platforms that was created, and Patriot Platforms had a P.O. box, and that P.O. box was 7-minute drive away from Jason J. Jelinas' house. They connected the email addresses that they, basically scrubbed every site that QAppanon had, and part of it was from a job posting where on Facebook they were looking for somebody to translate Q drops into other languages, right? And so they left an email address for that, said Q's looking for people to translate, and just from that one email address, they were scrubbing all sorts of other websites looking for connections. Well, they found a connection to Jason Jelinas, and they also found that the phone number listed for Patriot Platforms, the LLC that was basically the owner of these apps, like this QMap app that they were trying to create, and also this other one called Armor of God. The phone number for that company also matched the public listing for Jason J. Jelinas' phone number. So if you were going to call that company, you would be calling Jason J. Jelinas. So, yeah, he got doxxed. And then, people went ahead and looked at his listings on, Ladders and LinkedIn and stuff like that, and found him. And the dude actually happens to be an IT professional who has risen to the rank of director at Citigroup. Or Citi now. It's just CITI. But dude has a good paying job as a director at Citigroup. And he's probably sweating balls right now because the internet has found him and they are connecting him to this movement. Reporters descended on his house and tried to ask him questions, and he said that the QAnon movement was just it's a movement of patriots that are trying to defend America. And he, other than that, he didn't give any further comment. But the QMap.pub website went down after Jason Gelinas was doxxed. And it seemed really suspicious, that, Jason Gelinas being doxxed and then the site just goes down. It's probably him. Probably. Also, around the same time, the Patreon gets ended, right? And if you were to go to a site called Graphtreon, which actually graphs different Patreon accounts, you'll see that so August 2020, the payments coming into this account spiked from about $2,000 per month, and it went up to like $3,200 by September 10th, and then September 11th it was cut off. So around the same time as he was doxxed, website goes down and the Patreon is ended, right? Possibly because people could request a refund from the Patreon account, and that would possibly give them the ability to pursue the identity of who was getting payments from that account if they weren't being given what they paid for, the Patreon perks. And in that way, that would be another way for people to tie it back to Jason J. Gelinas, who we now just assume was probably QApanon, the username, right? So, who is Q after all of this? We can't say that it's all Jim Watkins, and we can't say that it's all Jason J. Gelinas. It's probably some interplay between the two. Maybe, one or the other decided to try to get in on the Q credibility business after the other one did. It's kind of a chicken or the egg kind of situation. We still don't know exactly who comes up with the spew that is these QAnon drops that they all believe. But what I do know is there are some scary drops that they often talk about the coming storm, right? Part of that being the belief that they have that there are sealed indictments that is basically for almost every Democrat in office, right? And that all these sealed indictments are waiting for this one day where there's going to be like 10 days of no internet, and the president is going to go into hiding during that time. And then during that 10 days, all these people are going to be rounded up. And then when the internet comes back on, everybody will be made aware that all of these people were arrested for being part of the child sex cabal. So, what disturbs me about this is it reminds me of people believing that at any time Jesus could be returning to earth, the second coming. Jesus actually told his disciples, it's written right there in the Bible, that during their lifetime he would return. 2,000 years later, people are still literally waiting for that literal return and believing that nobody knows the hour or the day. And they take things out of context and create new meaning, just like the QAnon adherents themselves. They actually promote this by being so cryptic with their Q drops. Their posts are very cryptic, intentionally, so that people can read them, every which way. They're vague. They're basically like a cross between cold reading and astrology. They're intentionally vague to create this same sort of, whatever happens, it fits what Q says sort of mentality. And the few things that I've seen called Q proofs that are on 8kun or were on 8chan and people documented were there, they could still have been faked. To me, the easiest way that somebody could have faked some of these Q proofs is, if you're the site owner, you can actually go in and edit things like timestamps. And you could say that this certain Q post happened, on a certain day before it actually happened, and then later on say, oh, well, this proves that he knew that, this day and time the president was going to have these two tweets, separated by this much time exactly. How could he have possibly known that unless he was connected to the president? Well, that's easy enough. You just backdate the prediction. And especially with the site hosting problems and people not paying attention in the very beginning, like this was going to be a 10 million idiot movement, well, it's really easy to pull the wool over people's eyes and create these Q proofs. Same thing with the word tippy top. Oh, we got the president to say the word tippy top. Well, the post that said that he should do that could have been backdated. And since it was a request, people weren't looking at the other users. They were looking at the Q posts. So to have it be from a user who said, please ask the president to say the word tippy top, that's really easy to backdate, because nobody was archiving user posts like they were just archiving the main Q poster. So yeah, what's scary to me is that $3,000 that QAnon was going to get was it looks like it was headed towards turning this into even more of a religious movement with this Armor of God app. Getting it closer to being a cult. You can see the purpose for the Armor of God app. At least it cleaned up some of the things that I find distasteful about Q followers, in that it specifically says we don't like racism or sexism and stuff like that, like on that app. But it's scary to think that they're getting a little bit closer to wanting to be a religious movement, because it's already kind of culty. Scarier than that is that Jim Watkins on 8kun had posted a couple times the links for people to donate to his political PAC that he created for just the purpose of spreading the message of Q, right? And filed the way that it is, he does not have to report who gives to it or how much they give. So maybe it could be, a little honeypot of, a couple $1 million of, donations that, it could be anyone who's giving to it, even, say, foreign entities who want to sow discord within our republic here. And this guy is just going to, either, hopefully it'll be like the NRA and it'll be pilfered for things that are not related to the cause. Maybe it'll pay for him to have a yacht in the Philippines. I'm okay with that a lot more than spending that money, say, on advertising to spread the message of Q. I don't like that. But yeah, the Patreon that thankfully ended, and the PAC, wow, with 10 million followers, if each of them just donated $1, or if just every 10th one donated $5, that's a sizable amount of money that could be used to sway an election. And the purpose of that PAC was specifically to support candidates that were affiliated with the QAnon movement. And we've seen it already, that there are, at low levels of government, there are people, and even, in the House of Representatives winning right now, that have retweeted Q posts, and said in, little videos to their constituents things that mirror QAnon rhetoric. And it's disgusting, for a guy with politics like mine, I can only hope that if Donald Trump were to be voted out of office in the coming election, which is just, a little more than 40 days away, hopefully this whole QAnon thing will just disappear. Hopefully. Because it won't be, connected to its savior anymore, the way that it just completely, it sucks his dick, really, all the time. Like, he can do no wrong. Makes excuses for him. It's anyways, that's where I'm at with it. It's either Jim Watkins or Jason J. Jelinek, or they at least know who Q is. At this point, I'm pretty sure, but we can't really pin it down to which one it is, but we do know that with each little thing that we learn, the reactions from them, such as pulling down websites and Patreon stuff and whatnot, their reactions to us learning about them say a lot. And I hope the more that this kind of stuff gets exposed, the less people will think that this is an actual outlet for the government to talk to people directly so that they can be in the know, Hopefully we can expose this as just the sham that it is. And people will wake up. Shit.